First of all, let me greet Brikena XHOMAQI on behalf of the European Lifelong Learning Platform. Very welcome to this event. And also let me greet Fergal FINNEGAN, Professor of Adult Education in Maynooth University in Ireland, and the representative of ESREA, research community, dealing with matters like active citizenship as an important issue in adult and lifelong learning. Very welcome, Fergal. And also let me greet Professor Sir Alan Tuckett back to the platform. Thank you, Alan, to be with us. Thank you, Dorothee, to have arrived back to the program. Thank you very much for following the discourse of the week. I don't know, Mipe is around. I have not seen, my screen is rather small to identify each and all. I hope she is with us. Let me greet Heribert Hinton from Bornheim in Germany. And also let me greet Katarina Popovic, ICA Secretary General and Professor of Adult Education in Belgrade. Thank you, Katarina, to be with us. And also Maya is with us, Maya Maksimovic from Belgrade. Thank you, Maya, for coming in as well. Mepine is with us from South Africa, Pretoria, if I understood well where she is situated. And thank you to each and all member of this discussion today, when we are trying to collect and provide comments and insights to some matters regarding active citizenship. So what I would like to do is to make it a little bit atypical. And I would like to give the floor to Brikena and then to Fergal to make a little insight. How do you think, what is your current approach to the topic that we are discussing right now? And then we would go back to the presenters to share with us what you have experienced through the week, what you have learned, what is your impression about the topic that we've discussed. You can stay with your own one, you can have an overview of the week itself. And then, of course, all other members of today's event is very welcome to put questions and comments into the chat. But you can also raise your hand, and I give you the floor to make it more face-to-face and just not write quotations from the floor to be reflected only. Brikena, so let me give you the floor. We are very much interested how your organization, distinguished organization, the European Lifelong Learning Platform, what is your recent approach to the matter of citizenship, global and active citizenship, and what do you see, what are the perspectives for lifelong learning to improve this very much challenging issue?
Hello, Balázs. I hope you can all hear me. Hello to everyone and to UCAN friends and colleagues. First, let me congratulate you for all this last 3-4 weeks that you have been so heavily and working so hard on different topics and the role of universities, which I appreciate a lot and I welcome a lot, and I'm looking forward to the outcomes as well, so that we can see how we can bring it up to the lifelong learning platform agenda as well for the years to come. Yeah, I'm glad to be with you here. Of course, the topic is at the very heart of the lifelong learning platform. As it says in our banner, that the lifelong learning platform is about building inclusive, democratic, accessible, quality and modern education systems for all. And one of the goals of the platform from its beginning has been indeed to promote active participation in society. and putting the emphasis on the role of education to prepare learners and citizens for a society that they want to shape and they want to bring a social change in it. So this is really at the core of the platform work. And for some of you that probably don't know the platform, it's an organization that gathers different sectors of education, from early childhood to adult education, having their formal education environments, non-formal and informal. And this is very important because this cross-sectoral approach to active participation in society is very important, because while of course many different sectors can play their role, they can't do it alone. So it's very important that they work with each other. And one of the biggest, let's say, challenge, but also one of the biggest opportunities for universities is really to see how universities can work better with the community, how they can better how they can better serve the society, the local context where they are based, but not only the global, because they have this universal mission as well. So it's very important. When it comes to our approach to citizenship education, as I said, really the cross-sectoral approach is very important, as I said, and the fact that citizenship education is not something that we learn only in theory. We have to also practice. So we have to have space in order to practice what are the values of a democratic society. And therefore it's very important that there are different ways of learning about it and different ways of practicing active citizenship. But the very role of lifelong learning, for example, in citizenship education, is really the fact that you can't only teach or learn about citizenship when you are, of course you have to start as early as possible, but it doesn't end at your graduation. You have to continuously learn, to continuously adapt to new societies and new changes in the society, and be an active citizenship continuously. And that requires learning all the time in order to face and to be able to participate in different part of the society. So this is very important that indeed we recognize the value of lifelong learning. And at European level, we are fighting for that. We are fighting for the role of education, not only to prepare people for the labor market, but also for the social and the society. So for personal development, which is very important. And unfortunately, this very morning, it's very interesting how you also were focusing on this topic, because this morning I was attending a conference of one of our member organizations, which is the regional authorities that are also promoting lifelong learning. And their project was with the Institute of Peace Education in Italy. And they were really discussing how we can actually integrate and mainstream peace education and transform conflicts through education. And it links very well to what you are also discussing, because indeed citizenship education is all about enabling individuals to really be critical, but also to be tolerant to the diversity and to contribute to the social causes in their contexts, being local, regional, national, or European or global. So it's very important that universities also play their role in that. Yeah, I would probably stop here with as a first insights. Yeah, I think it's fine to start with, and then we can discuss.
Thank you so much, Fergal. What is your experience in the last couple of years changes regarding the role of universities, and especially quality orientations to understand citizenship education, active citizenship from adult education point of view? What is your reflection for this topic?
Well, can I maybe speak a bit more broadly than to that specific question?
Yeah, of course.
I guess, first of all, I am here partially because I'm a member of ESREA, which is 12 networks. I am one of the co-conveners, along with Maya, in the Active Democratic Citizenship Network and Adult Learning. So part of my interest in this week and in the previous weeks has been to see how research is working on this. So I would say ESREA is 30 years old next year. If you look at the history of ESREA, regardless of what it being, me being in one particular network, which is concerned with citizenship, right across the networks, there's a concern with adult education and citizenship. And I think that's because the whole field, it's a central theme of the whole field and has been historically for a number of years. And I think that came out of Herbert's very useful presentation and Alan Tuckett's remarks as well, very clearly. And I think we're coming together, and it's very important to have this conversation because I think we're in a very, very deep democratic crisis. I mean, perhaps deeper than we've even stated this week. I think we're at a time of rupture, and I think we really are on the cusp of important shifts. And I think probably more truthfully, rather than to talk about crisis, we should talk about polycrisis, intersecting sets of crises which fit into each other: financial, political, economic, and I suppose the one that probably concerns me the most, environmental, and that they intersect. And I think if we don't find an adequate social response and an adequate adult education response to these crises, we're in deep, deep trouble, or even more trouble. And I think the crisis is such, and this links to something that Pipe said during the week, is that I think we're suffering from a loss of a future at the moment, in a sense of either things are just going to repeat themselves or they're going to diminish. And I think some of the populist movements, particularly of the far right, I think make a great deal out of that. And I think adult education has to take on that level of seriousness. That we're talking about a diminishing sense of possibility, diminishing horizons. And I think to renew that, we have to do two things, and that's happened this week. We have to say, well, what are we doing that's still valuable? What's in our history that can do that? But also say, well, what do we have to do differently? And I said some of my questions to Maya and Katerina and Alan were about trying to identify what we need to do differently, because I think we're in a different time. My own particular take, and I don't want to go on too long, but I think adult education have to be designed to deal with complexity, personal, social, environmental complexity, to deal with high levels of ambiguity and anxiety. I think if we don't tackle inequality through adult education, both in trying to understand it and address it, we're in real trouble. I mean, well, inequality in terms of wealth, income, but also power, because I think the democratic crisis that I'm talking about is fundamentally linked to that. And I think to do that, we're going to have to dig deep into our imaginative resources historically and in the present. And I think that's why some of the presentations this week were so heartening, just to sort of say, well, there is loads that we can draw on in emergent practices. The last thing I would say is, and I'm interested in hearing what people have to say, I think it will mean a different type of relationship between movements and institutions. And I think we have to reinvent that. I don't think we can work simply the way we have. And I think perhaps, and maybe this is just an Irish perspective, a lot of adult education has lost its organic connection with movements. So I think part of our job is to find ways of saying, what are the movements, how are they constituted, how do they help us build on resources of hope and critical thinking, reflexive agency, and how do we begin to institutionalize them through adult learning? Anyway, those are very general remarks, but they are in a way a response which is personal, but also from listening to people, not just this week, but over the month. And I really appreciate Carme's and Balazs's work in putting this together. Thanks very much.
Very much unusual. I would like to provide the opportunity if someone would like to comment on what Fergal just has mentioned, because I think it is very much interesting what he has claimed. Ellen or Katarina, do you have comment to this?
Plenty of things to say, and it's really inspiring. Thanks to Brikena also, she started with an important aspect and put it nicely in the context of lifelong learning, and also Fergal, so also going back to this what we lost, what we missed to do, like connection to the communities, to the movement and so on. But I would like to bring, it's not unusual to bring COVID-19 into discussion about the role of the universities. And we face, as you all know, this crisis of social sciences and humanities, crisis in terms of, cutting funds, closing the departments and so on. And I believe it was a kind of feeling like, Fukuyama, end of the history. I mean, universities, they do have a role to play. The world is more or less okay. So universities need to fit into that, serve the industry, maybe here and there, nurture some culture, and that's it. And I believe COVID-19 was a slap in the face of the world, showing that's not the case, not only because of the health crisis, but because of so many accompanying aspects to this health crisis that show that we as a university, as a researcher, especially as the humanities, we have a lot to say. There are so many questions that need our answer. I have a feeling that we are not even aware of the seriousness or not so really prepared, because we were not used in the last decade or 2 decades to be asked questions like this. But it's about time to do that. And this is also a comment to this new normal, or what should we do differently, or what was the mistake. And the moment is probably to, especially for the humanities, to give a kind of a new, well, if not leadership, then a new interpretation to what's going on, and to show some ways out. I was impressed by the massive failure during the COVID-19 crisis coming from the world of technology. And I'm not meaning all the nice platforms, all the Zooms and Skypes and so on. No, I mean all those big data, all those magnificent computers around the globe with the huge capacities and all these big data, euphoria. They were not able, they're not able to give some basic answers. So it's really impressive in a negative sense, but shows really that the way the whole research and academia was going, or was pushed to, was the wrong one. So I think we are back to some really basic questions about the purpose of human life, the nature of a social relationship, the nature of communication, dealing with the social problems, and then coming to our topic also, what is citizenship? What is a citizen in this new context? Yesterday, Maya and I reported about this new, of course, there is movement and there is a critical thinking, and citizens who is someone who is not only voting once in 4 years, but has to do more. So this is like a new topic for the university as well. And there is another change coming. I would add this to the task, like as Fergal said, contact and communication with the movement and with the local community groups and so on. We are also facing the opportunity to change the research paradigm, to change the dominant, the mainstream in the research paradigm. Because this also quantification and statistical and empirical, it did not help, especially not in the COVID-19. So
just a remark here, Katarina, not to interrupt you, but Pat Davis just mentioned in the comments that there's a lot of scope for UCAN and ESREA to work more closely together to bring policy practice, active citizenship and research into a stronger and more effective dialogue. You're just pointing the same in a certain way.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the new approaches, the new research methods, and I think this is a chance. Of course, we shouldn't take it for granted, because on the other hand, we have this answer of like, oh, we can do everything online and there is digital and there are companies trying to fill in all the gaps that emerged. But I believe that the world really feels this need to some new answers. And this is an invitation to academia, especially to the humanities and to our universities, to give those answers. This is a huge challenge because we don't have them. We were not used to answer them. We were only used to produce, evidence-based research, evidences and researches for the, policy and companies and industry and so on. But I think this is more important than ever. So we should use the opportunity, and especially in the, sorry, just to underline what Fergal also said, this crisis of democracy.
Yes.
So this is, if not now, then when? When
Yeah.
should we give those answers?
Ellen, thank you, Katarina. Ellen.
Well, I thought the challenge about working cross-sectorally that Brikena brought up, and the issues around inequality that Fergal focused on, are both critical for us. Just to refer to one element of the talk I gave on Monday, it seems to me that when we're thinking about the role of lifelong learning from a university perspective, we have to start from recognizing that universities are perceived by many as part of the problem, that the absolute cultural inequality, the access to endorsed authority, endorsed voice, and marginalized and silenced voice is a profound function of the way we've developed our education systems in the West, in the post-war era in particular, so that they're no longer a specialist small cadre, but a major form of exclusion. Of course, inclusion, but more importantly, when you're thinking about an active citizenship of all of the people, the crunch question is, how can we reform ourselves or reform parts of what we do in a way to make them trustable, accessible, and functional for people? And what strikes me, I thought Maya's presentation yesterday was really brilliant, but it also struck me who isn't there, who wouldn't have access to or feel comfortable with the discourse that starts so open in its form of dialogue. And I mean, patience is the experience that the technical skill that I thought down the years of my work that I noticed in the most effective forms of transformation. I can't remember if I mentioned, but Michael when Northern College in England was created in the 70s, they funded a colleague to just walk around meeting miners and working class groups in pubs, in clubs, in their in shops and so on. For 3 years, nothing happened.
Yeah, it is very
It's
true.
an institution absolutely owned by the people who developed confidence in that period. Now, how universities change from where we are now to be able to contribute to the real challenges that all of us as citizens have to transform ourselves involves a lot of self-reflection about the ways we present the work that we do to make it accessible to people or not. And those seem to me to be internal problems that we have to address as well in order to be able to be most effective in the ways in solidarity and partnership, working across boundaries, and we find that hard enough. And I think adult educators have a real role to play in that, but it's also a price of our flexibility and cross-sectoral focus that we're then seen too much to be a little bit of everything and not very much of a particular thing. And that again is something in addressing the problems that the world has that we have to develop a new confidence, a new voice about.
Yeah, very, very much is exciting. And I think just this is somehow important to raise questions that can be also incorporated in the discussion. Mary Mahoney indicated in her comment, I absolutely agree with Katarina's position. Adult learning and lifelong learning come into their own in a pandemic, and where institutions responded, take up what was outstanding. The challenge is we don't have a clear external public political profile that explains the crucial role that learning of all types plays when in crisis, and specifically the role that higher education plays in leading this. Scope is there to act, but it must be rapid, clear, and consistent. It is also must be in a language of the issues facing policymakers and adults. So I think this is something very much interesting. And Fergal, I would like you to, because you just started to make a comment to what Mary has just underlined. Do you have something to add to this?
No,
I don't hear you.
So I'll just be very brief. I don't want to take much time. I do think this question of how we do research, which Alan is pointing to, with
Right.
students, and it cannot be business as usual. It means a different, more engaged way, a less prescriptive way of developing knowledge from the bottom up. And I think a real challenge is for us to move towards that institutionally.
Yeah, yeah, it is. Yeah, I just think that this question is something like very much important. How universities may open some new perspectives, not just on the research side, but also to relate to matters of access and inclusion. And I'm just wondering whether Dorothea or Mepina might have a comment to the ongoing discussion. What is at stake? What is challenging to higher education to develop active citizenship through accessibility and inclusivity?
So, Mpine, if you don't mind, I would like to start, if it's okay. Yeah. So, I think, as already said, the crisis has disrupted our understanding of a normal and challenged the traditional views of what the purpose of higher education is and how it has to be delivered. And for rethinking lifelong learning, I think it's necessary to lay the grounds for fundamental change now, and to make use of the movement we can see with universities moving online towards making education accessible to as many people as possible. And I think it's kind of an opportunity brought by the crisis, as universities had to think about new ways of access. So there's a chance to push forward into direction of widening participation for university lifelong learning. And I think it's main task of universities to equip students with competencies to deal with disruptive situations, with these global challenges we have, and in order to enable them as active citizens. And for now and for the future, we need to observe what students get out of the COVID-19 crisis to reflect what it means for the curriculum of the future. So what are new learning requirements of students? What are new expectations that we have to address at universities? And I think it also means to be vigilant for future developments and to connect them with our, from university perspective, with our visions of higher education we aspire for. And maybe my last point, universities should try to ensure that students have good learning experience, and what is measured according to their expectations, and therefore to be aware of new expectations. And for university, this means to think on how to make them feel that they're not passive users of the study programs we deliver, but that their individual voices and action count. I think that's something that also Alan raised on Monday. And I think this is very much in general linked to the idea of that individual action has global impact. And I think that's key to the idea of active and global citizenship. And in my opinion, that's the key task for universities to bring students' voice, to take students' voice into account. And in this sense, to foster their their awareness for being active citizens.
Thank you. Mepina, do you have a?
Yes, yes. Thank you very much. I didn't know that I will be speaking today, so I was not. I was enjoying the conversation that was taking place. But having said that, I had to put it out there that we are up against an institution culture that has been exclusive over the years. And because of this exclusive nature of universities, it becomes very difficult when we talk about accessibility. It becomes very difficult when we talk about global citizenship. And maybe if I come to Africa, I think it's also for the benefit, politically, it's for the benefit of those who are in positions of power to leave people in a position where they are not active as citizens, so that they are able to bring them over and over again in the positions of power. And maybe that's very harsh to say, but that's how I view it. And therefore we need to rethink our role as higher education institutions in terms of how do we make sure that people are active citizens, and how do we make sure that people have access to equal education for all. And also to do that, it requires a complete different mind shift that is not necessarily popular at this point. And COVID-19 has shown us, it actually has leveled the field for us, because all of us, whether you have or you didn't have, there was something that you were lacking. Even if you had computers and all those things, you didn't know how to teach online. Even when you had all the gadgets that you have, you didn't know how to learn online. So all of a sudden, it leveled the field, and it enabled us to think about access issues and inclusivity. That was not something that we were familiar with thinking about and even talking about, because it was something that was, you know, people who come to universities are those that have to be at universities, not those that are not there. But the significant changes of COVID, and this came around again, that it needs to address issues of policy. It needs to address issues of regulation, because we are heavily regulated. It needs also to deal with issues of what do we mean by excellence? Do we mean excellence in terms of so many reports or articles that comes out of us? Mm-hmm. Or we mean excellence in terms of achieving the goal that the university, as I mentioned earlier, that it's a service. The education is a service. And being a service, we need to look at what do we mean by excellence. We can't be carrying on the culture that has been there for hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It worked for them. Let's do something that works for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think Pene's point is very important. Just Fergal indicated that access is often reduced to increased numbers to traditional institutions, and without any significant changes to the way we approach and imagine education. I think that's true. That's true. I would invite Heribert to the discussion, and would ask him that looking into the picture that you have described to us on Wednesday, and when we talk about active citizenship and the role for educational institutions and organization, what is your comment to today's discussion of ours?
My comment is that I would love to throw the net a little bit wider. You know, we are at the end of a month of intensive work of UCAN.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to participate in the first 3 weeks, but I think the other themes which you have tackled with lifelong learning perspectives in respect to the learning cities, work-based learning, and the digital, I think these are areas which are of highest relevance for us in active citizenship education. If I take, for instance, the work-based learning, then I, even in my small presentation on Wednesday, I was arguing that I'm against this so-called divide between these areas. And it may be that active citizenship is more important in work-based learning than in a lot of the activities we are doing. The majority of our people globally are somewhere in work, either in formal work or in the informal sector. I gave the example that in the informal sector, we have 2 billion of people who are outside mostly of any sort of education. They're outside, no kindergarten, no primary school, no schooling at all. and definitely no university. Hardly any adult learning and education for them. So if I insist it is important to come close to work-based learning, then it is something, let us include all what we are doing in active citizenship as part of lifelong learning. That's why I'm happy we have the platform here, yeah, so that we go across all of the sectors, and that is where active citizenship should be taking place. That it may be more difficult in the areas of work, yeah, than in the areas of education, I think is something which we may recognize also. So instead of commenting more, I don't know, Balázs, have you been in the other 3 weeks of the UCAN?
Yeah.
Can help us in getting a proper understanding how it worked. Yeah, and as a president of UCAN, of course, give us a perspective whether it was good you invest a month work and so many people in respect to the future development of UCAN as well, even within the platform from the lifelong learning perspective, cooperation, because that was a topic which Alan was stressing so much. We have to work together across the different education areas and of course globally with all the other areas in the field of life and work. So can you comment how this citizenship education, which we have touched this week, tied into the other weeks of the UCAN work?
Yeah, I think this is somehow very much important throughout the full week program, that I think not only the technical changes to very much move learning to change rapidly in the last couple of decades, but also the matter of workplace and work-based learning and problems of citizens orientation and digitalization, the use of technologies within higher education and through higher education partnership-based actions. I think everything is about access and inclusion, and the matter is, I think, very much striking how much we can pursue our goals based on public commitment and public concerns. What is our role? If there is, in my understanding, if we claim that public discourse ought to imply what missions for higher education, if it is not an internal debate, if it is not just an internal discourse within the institutions that ivory retires, but if we open up the discussion on the development of education, I think we can make a better job. But because what we do, it is something very much important. But at the same time, I do agree with Katarina that we have to reaffirm the role and the authority of science. What is scientific mission? What is the role for research work and education supported through scientific approaches in an era when populism and undereducation and non-education provides very dark sides of human behavior. And I think this is something very much the message of this UCAN Open Fora, that not only participation and inclusion, but also critical mind is very much important to develop human connections in quality directions, supported through quality knowledge exchange and skills development. So I do agree with you that it is very much important that there's so many areas where higher education plays an important role, but it can only work, in my understanding, in these 4 areas we visited or in the Open Fora, if there is a public commitment and good alliance in how to collect and share good knowledge in a community. So I would like to give back the floor to any of you. I'm very much interested, by the way, how Ellen is seeing this week. What have you?
I thought it was time to ask Maya, who hasn't.
Yeah, why not? Yes, Maya. What is your reflection to what we have just discussed?
Thank you, Alan. I was about to raise my hand.
Yeah, well, of course.
And I have to say that I really agree with my colleagues, and I very much agree with you, Alan, that we need to be very self-reflective about our own role. And I think we really have to question our elitistic position in knowledge production, and how really, especially with this very strong paradigm of quantification, and especially I think in the UK, the obsession with measuring of success of universities and publishing, but there is also important aspect of social dimension in the UK that I appreciate a lot. So I think with this discourse of quantification, and researchers and professors are really dealing with a lot of administrative work, and the research is very much shaped with this paradigm. So my question would be really how to reform this, how to really create research to involve in the research process that is meaningful to the community. And I would really go back to Fergal's question, how do we engage more with the social movements, and how do we really work with them? And again, who is excluded? And I agree that from this, that only in the work that I presented yesterday, only students were included. I'm also part of the collective where we work with people who live in periphery of Belgrade, mostly marginalized communities, Roma people. So we use similar methodology as well. But really the question is, how do we envision our role? How do we actually question ourselves? What is our purpose, especially when we have so much work, administrative work to do? And lately, I think we were at this is my second, it's very difficult now, especially in digitalized worlds, and especially in education. I think even more people are excluded. And there is this discourse and story that actually digitalization bring access to people, but I really do not agree with that. Even some of my students, they have only one computer in the house. So who will access this computer? Like primary school student, or so it's very. I think digitalization is just like another wrong direction for access. So Pat said that there need to be more collaboration, and I really agree with that. Collaboration among association, among universities, and ESREA, ULLL, universities, researchers. So how really to open this space. And I think really we need to think about our history as well. Who was dominating the universities? I mean, thinking about gender equality as well, like only for how many years women are included. And I think we still feel the consequences of that. So how to really, sometimes it's very comfortable being at the university, it is at the same time very comfortable position, but at the same time we are very much burdened with bureaucracy and administration, and we are losing, not losing, but sometimes we lose the overall perspective. So I would really love to collaborate more with people and to talk more about these problems.
Thank you very much. I think it's very much true. It's also an interesting comment has arrived from Mahmoud Havamdeh that this is important, that there is 1.5 billion students impacted in the year of COVID-19 who do not have doesn't take into account the marginalization, vulnerability, or invisibility of all those in school systems. And he claims that There must be online and high-tech learning tools and services available, but also dedicated to those people who are underrepresented. I think this is also very much important to make systems and technological accessible. Carmen just put a comment here also, but before that, there's a question from Pat Davis. A few years ago, UCAN had a project called Dialogue. Could that be used as a model for another project? I think it could. I think there's always a lesson when we have some developments of projects to be turned into further developed community-based actions. And as Carmen is just pointing out, there is a new project of ours called SMILE starting from December. This is one of the 3 pillars we explore in the project Carmen is just mentioning. We can keep interested people updated on the development. So I think this is also very much interesting in this regard. Let me just return back to Brikena regarding these topics. When you discussed the matter of active citizenship, what kind of comments you receive from your member organizations? How do they see constraints of this field to be developed? What is the negative scenario? Why can't we break through if there is such a strong commitment to work together to pursue active citizenship?
Well, one of the biggest issue is actually the space that is given, because as I said before, you can promote active citizenship, active participation, but if you are not heard, if you are not listened, if you are not given the space for that, you don't trust the system anymore and you will drop out of it. So this is one of the main issues that most of our members are facing, is that whatever they do in a democratic way to bring up issues to the right level, let's say, taking the example of the social dialogue and dialogue with citizens or learners to bring up issues, for example, at the governance level of university. If the university doesn't take any action on it, how do you want the students to continue to be active? If you see what I mean. So it's very important that the university, like any other institution at school level or adult education level, if they don't give the learners the space and they don't listen to them, of course we won't promote that. But the other issue that I see at more European level is that at European level, there is an issue with active citizenship education or citizenship education in general, which is very much linked to history teaching in Europe. And being education a non-EU competence, is very difficult for the EU to really recommend something in the area. Of course, they have phrased it as a council recommendation on common values and inclusive education as something that member states somehow to a certain extent accept, and they can work and cooperate and share expertise on that, but they can't really oblige member states to mainstream citizenship education because it's a sensitive and political issue for the member states. So this is another issue that we are facing. So, and then if I can say one last point that we were discussing this morning as well with FREREF, the regions, on the peace education, is that even when we speak about active participation or citizenship education at the EU level, and the fact that universities or all other education institutions should teach and help learners to acquire certain competences to be active, we still do it for the purpose of labor markets, which is very scary because, again, the purpose is not the right one. And this is because, you know, like some of you said, it's about the result-oriented policy making. So, and this craziness of having efficiency and production, that's a major issue. And if I can say one last thing, some of you mentioned knowledge production. I'm not going to get into that discussion now, but one of the things that I can bring to the table. Hello, is it your daughter?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Sophie.
We are talking about you. One of the things that we have started to change in LLLP as well is that we don't speak anymore of knowledge production, of knowledge acquisition. We speak of knowledge creation, and that changes the perspective on how we put learners at the center of the process. We create the knowledge with them, with citizens, with learners, not for them. And this is actually something that maybe universities can also embrace much more.
This is the other term that we've used in adult education, not to use adult education, but you use learning with adults. It's much more interesting and more focused to the human lives. Katarina, you have a comment. You indicated.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I would like to share with you the feeling that I'm frightened by the coming challenges, and there are two of them. First one was just explained by Brikena. So just to put it briefly, on one hand, there is this pressure for the university and academia to be efficient, productive, result-oriented, and so on. And that's also the reality. We want our students to get a job after the university. And at the same time, academia should have another role. So how to balance this one? This is first challenge. And the other one, listening what colleagues were talking, I see it, it's very nicely expressed in a sentence I've read a few days. The dominance of the opinion over the knowledge is the cause of all authoritarianism. And since we are talking also about the civic education, the challenges, on one hand, we do want to decolonize academia and the usual way of thinking. We do want to work on those power issues. We do want to include different epistemologies. Maya brought the issue of feminism and so on. So obviously this is an important task for academia. So to be more inclusive in that sense and more open to destructure some of these old-fashioned structures within the academia. At the same time, and I think it's crucial for the modern times, for these post-truth times we live in, is to regain this authority of science, of knowledge, of research, especially in the context of civic education. It's also our task to contribute to this, media literacy, which is a part of civic education, how to fight fake news, alternative facts, and so on. This is the role of academia and the role of the researchers. And that's the moment where we really need to regain the authority of research facts over the alternative opinion of anyone who might have a power. So I see really a challenge with these two approaches, and sometimes I'm frightened because I'm not quite sure how to deal with this challenge, but I see this is coming, and this is probably one of the most important roles of or task for academia in the modern days.
Yeah, thank you so much. Fergal, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I'm in a way, it's a response to what people have said, but it's also a reiteration of a point. I don't think we can imagine citizenship education simply by adding to what is already. We have to do things differently. The level of the challenges we face can only be done if we reimagine what we're doing in a really profound way. And I think part of that is not saying, okay, traditional citizenship education in the classroom. It has to be citizenship education which actually inquires into the limits and affordances to citizenship. Like, what are the barriers? A university that doesn't look at its own systemic and structural barriers to open good adult learning is not doing its job. Adult education in the community, which is not looking at the limits put on people's lives to achieve citizenship, is no longer doing its job. And I think my own particular answer, there's not one answer to this, is that we orientate ourselves towards a project of reflexive agency on various levels. And that's what education should be doing. And adult education knows how to do that. Traditional education, by and large, stops it.
True, very true. I think it is also there. I think we have, in this regard, something very much important, how to position, for example, university lifelong learning. And as just Carmen mentioned in her recent post to the chat, that UCAN truly believes in putting students into the center. And I think wherever we have tried to, in whatever forms we've tried to make higher education institutions across Europe, like, for example, our partnership with the EUA and other bodies to recognize lifelong learning as not just simply a matter of a project or to just say something on the policy lines, but also to turn higher education institutions more proactive towards their communities, and at the same time to make use of good examples, because there's so many universities across Europe and the world which have been doing quite a lot to bridge active citizenship to learning and knowledge transfer in good forms that we don't necessarily recognize as good forms. Ellen, please.
My machine decided to put you into a tiny corner with all sorts of other crap, so I couldn't switch on. Right. Well, one of the things that strikes me is about what makes it easier for people to drop their defenses and explore how to do things differently. And somebody said to me very early in my working life, you know, it's far easier to change people's minds at a party or by having fun together than it is by storming the barricades, because you storm the barricades, they build the barricades bigger. And my point really is two sorts of things, really. One is that celebration is an important form of the sort of repositioning Fergal was just talking about. And it generates the kind of energies we saw in those illustrations from Maya yesterday of student activism. The second one is, when you look at the sophistication across our social space that gaming throws up, and the use made there of the really ubiquitous forms of technology surrounding the mobile phone, then I think there are a set of pedagogical, epistemological challenges for us about thinking about how things that are part of the popular demotic, things that are absolutely not normative within our own forms of intellectual production. There clearly are problems about how you deal with complexity in short, sharp images. But my observation about a lot of the games that kids play and adults play is, but mainly kids, is that they do deal with complexity in quite interesting ways. So the issue about using that as a metaphor for thinking about dialogue and the engagement between knowledge creation and also knowledge sharing and cultural confidence sharing, which are all part of the mix. There's a lot to learn from the way other people are doing it, I think.
I think it is very true. And I also think that this whole week's inputs and the comments you've just made personally or comments written in, I think this all talks about changing society where people are striving for trust and working together for better lives, well-being, and to experience something through learning which might be shared in the community, intergenerational, intercultural. And I think that's very much true, that the universities have a significant role. People claim on us that we have a role in our society, and I think we have to do this. Timo Haltunen just mentioned, because we are coming to a close, welcome to our session on Monday about how is the UCAN Open Fora connected to next activities. So in the chat, you will find the link to this, that we are trying to discuss messages, which way to go forward. And finally, let me just remind you that in the chat, Mary Mahoney indicated that we need to acknowledge that lifelong learning departments are not homogeneous. Also true, this is another trend in the disciplinary settings, that we also need further improvements and opening up to bridging to other discipline areas. We are coming to a close. If there is any final comment that you would like to make, who would like to make some final comment to this event of the weekend of today. Do you have anything you would like to share with us and the members of the community?
Maybe just an invitation to share the materials, the articles, publications. We did it already in the past few days and today also, and it's very, very welcome. And I have to say, I enjoyed the discussion with the colleagues so much, and I would like to have more of it.
Thank you very much,
Thanks,
Katarina.
Eucen.
Thank you. And I think it's a great job of our secretariat. Thank you, Karma. Thank you to all the colleagues who have provided the background for this whole 4 weeks event. And I think it is very much important that we try to continue with such activities to show up our engagement and commitment to such issues and work together with different stakeholder groups across Europe and beyond. I'm very grateful for the colleagues who have made presentations and to share their thoughts with us. Thank you very much indeed. And let me close today's event with a call that on the United Nations Global Education Monitoring Report this year dealt with the matter of inclusion. And I think this issue, how to make education to be inclusive, is not just something that when you take people who are, for example, school-aged or beyond, the sites and new sites of learning could be accessible for those vulnerable groups that we've been talking about. But this is also a matter today, how we can reach that our communities can be involved to further turn to matters that may very much influence and challenge their everyday lives, what we talk about, those development goals. And each and every aspect, I think we need good skills and knowledge to be raised amongst people in order to understand and respond in an effective way. Thank you so much for now. I think universities have a certain role in this. Let's try to discover our perspectives together, and we are very much committed to share our thoughts and intentions regarding research work with our knowledge sharing on our platforms at eucen.eu. Thank you very much indeed for your participation, and thank you very much for your commitment to the whole Open Fora activity, the 4 weeks. I would like to thank all the presenters of the 4 weeks, all the participants. Yes, Carmen. Yes.
Finish. Timo has to talk, and
yeah, I know.
We have still one session.
Yeah. So let me give. Oh, it's my fault. Sorry. Let me give the floor to Timo. Indeed.
Yeah. I hope you can hear me. So greetings from Finland. So I would like to just briefly, very briefly say that welcome to the session on Monday, where we will be having a look at how does this Open Fora connect to the other activities in the future. And here we are going to have a look at the next conference, 1st to 4th of June next year, under the title Learning for Impact in a Changing World. So there we will have a look at what kind of a conference we will be having in Utrecht in the Netherlands, and talking about how universities are enabling professionals to perform in a dynamic societal context to the best of their abilities, and to continue to do so throughout their lives. And there we will have a very nice talk from Professor Wiege Bakker, who is the chair in our planning committee for this conference. He's the Dean of Lifelong Learning and a Professor of Society-Oriented Higher Education in the Faculty of Law, Economics and Governance in the Utrecht University. But also we will be having Eva Chendon, our Vice President of the ULLL, and we will be having a look at the call for contributions for that conference. So of course, we are hoping that all of you will be thinking about to give a presentation of some form, hopefully in the conference, and to share your visions and ideas about this topic. But as we are already running over time, so I'm not taking more time, but please have a look at the link in the chat for the coming conference, and then joining our session on Monday at noon. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Timo. Excuse me for my having forgotten about this very important aspect of our commitment and future activities, also to be emphasized around the Monday event. Very welcome we invite you to this session as well. Thank you very much again for your participation. And I would like to give the floor to Carme to formally close on behalf of UCAN.
It's not necessary, Balázs, but thank you, and thank you very much, everybody, and see you on Monday.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye for now.
Thank you to
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Bye-bye.
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 Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.